Hey, 7th graders, this is Miss Oyen. I teach at Dodge Middle School, and today we're going to talk about graphing equations. So we're going to be looking at different lines, and after today's lesson, you will be able to actually graph lines that look like these, and you'll know how to do that, all right? So the first thing we need to do is kind of review some things that we've gone over in the past. All right, so first thing, this is called a coordinate plane. You've worked with these before, you've seen graphs. First thing we want to label on this is that there's something called an x-axis and a y-axis. All right, so the x-axis is the horizontal axis. So let's go ahead and fill that in on our notes. Horizontal means going across. All right, so the x-axis is the horizontal. So this would be, this one going across, this would be the x-axis. So if you can label that on your graph. The y-axis is the vertical axis, the one going up and down. So let's go ahead and write vertical. That means up and down. And let's label it right on our graph. That's the y-axis. All right, another important point for you to know is the origin. All right, the origin, and maybe we can even add that to our notes on the side. The origin is the middle point of the graph. It's where the x and the y-axis, it's where it crosses. Okay, this would be the origin. That's 0, 0. Right in the middle. That's where we start everything off, right from in the middle. That's called the origin. All right. One other thing that we learned about earlier this year was there's something called quadrants. There's 4 quadrants on a graph. You can see it's split into 4 different sections. All right, this is called quadrant 1. You can even label that. This is quadrant 2. Quadrant 3 is down here. And finally, this is quadrant 4. All right, so there are 4 different quadrants. And we're going to be graphing in these 4 different quadrants. All right, so before we start graphing, we need to kind of review what an ordered pair is. Another word for that is coordinates. So you've seen coordinates before, all right? They're usually listed like this, like 2, 3, all right? Or you might see it as x, y. So that first number, the x coordinate, all right? So the x is the horizontal axis, so it's going to tell you to either go left or to go right. Okay, and it's going to depend if it's a positive or negative number. If it's a negative number, you go left. If it's a positive number, you're going to go right. All right, now the y-axis is the up and down one, so the y-coordinate, the second number, is going to tell you to either go up or down, and it works the same way. If it's a positive number, you're going to go up. If it's a negative number, you're going to go down. All right. Now, when you're graphing points, you always need to start from the origin. Remember, the origin is 0, 0. So let's start and look at point A. So point A says -2, 4. Now, the first number, remember, it's x, y. The first number tells you to go on the x-axis, all right, from 0, 0. So it says to go left 2. -2 means left 2. So I'm going to go left 2 spots. That'd be right here. But then it also tells me to go 4 on the y-axis. It's positive, so I'm going to go up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is my point. I went left 2, up 4. All right, I'm going to label that point A. All right, done with that one. Let's try point B. This time it says 0, so I'm starting at the origin. I'm not going to go left or right anywhere. It says move 0. Okay, and then the y-axis, it says go up 3. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3. I'm going to put my coordinate and call it point B. All right, let's try one more. Let's do F. 7, -4. So the first number tells me left or right. It's positive, so I'm going to go right 7. So I start at the middle. I'm going to go right 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then it says -4, so I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to label that point F. All right, I would like you to pause the video now and try the next 3 points by yourself. When you're done, push play. All right, please check out your points, see if you have them correct. It's the ones in green. As soon as you have those correct, let's go on to the next. You may push play, and we'll continue to go on. All right, so today we're going to be talking about something called solution to an equation. Now, solution, you kind of think when you hear solution, you also think of the word answer, okay? Now, a solution to an equation is an x and y value that makes the equation true, please fill that in. It makes it true. So let's take a look. I have this equation, y equals 3x minus 1. And they're going to give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different points that I need to test to see, do these work in this equation? So here's what you do. Now we know when we look at coordinates, it's always x comma y. All right? So I'm going to take the x number, it says -1, I'm going to put it where the x is. So I'm going to put a -1 right here. Now I'm actually going to work this out, and it should equal -2, because that's the y, right? It should equal -2. So we're going to actually test that out. So here's what we do. Let's actually multiply this out. It says 3 times -1. Well, that's -3, and then it says to subtract 1. Well, whenever I see a subtraction sign, I add the opposite, and that gives me -4. Is that the same as -2? Nope. So this first one is not a solution. This first point is no. Let's write no by that one. All right, let's test out the next one. All right, so I'm going to erase that. You guys have space, so you can work it out all over the place. So let's try this one. How about -1 comma -4? Well, I think we just worked that out, but we'll test it. Let's put a -1 here. So 3 times -1, -3 minus 1. Let's add the opposite, and I get -4 for y. And that's exactly what it says here. So this one would be a solution. All right, let's check the next one. All right, it says 0 comma -1. So if I put a 0 for x, right, because it's always x comma y, if I put a 0 in there, 3 times 0 is 0, take away 1. Let's add the opposite. That would give me -1 for y, but that says +1, so that is not a solution. But the one right next to it says 0, -1, which is what I got, so this one would be a solution. All right, I want you to hit pause, and I want you to test out the next point. All right, so the last point, let's put a 5 in for x. So if I put a 5 here, it's 3 times 5, which is 15. Take away 1 is 14. It says 2, so that one is not a solution. All right, so that's how you test whether points are solutions or not. All right, now today we're also going to be working with 2 different types of equations. We're going to be working with linear equations, and a linear equation, look what word is right in there, linear. I'm going to underline it. It says line, so it's an equation that forms a straight line. All right, you have a little graph below on your note sheet. So a linear equation would be an equation that forms a straight line. So this would be linear. I'm going to label that right on my graph. This would also be linear. It's forming a straight line. All right, a nonlinear equation, well, non means not, so it would not make a line. So this would be a nonlinear equation, a curve. This would be a nonlinear equation. All right, so I'm going to label that on my graph as well. So we're going to graph one linear equation and one nonlinear equation and see what they look like. So let's take a look at our first one. All right, we have this equation, y equals 2x minus 1. All right, so all I'm going to give you is an equation. You have to figure out, well, how do I graph that? All right, so before you can graph anything, you need some coordinates. I don't have any coordinates, so I need to see if I can find some solutions. So what I like to do is I like to pick some different x's to put in here and see what the y equals. So it would be a solution that makes it true. So I like to start with a 0. Right? 0 is a real easy one to do. So I'm going to put a 0 in for x. So if I put a 0 right here, so if I do 2 times 0, that's 0. Take away 1. I'm going to add the opposite. I get -1 for y. All right, now I just got a point. I did my x and my y, so it would be 0 comma -1. All right, whenever you graph an equation, you need to have some positive points, some negative points, and 0. So I'm going to do, I like to do the same numbers. I like to use -2 for a point, -1, 0, 1, and 2. All right, so I'm going to kind of work this out. I have some space up here. So I'm going to put -2 in for x. All right, so I'm going to do 2 times, it says x, I'm going to put -2, then subtract 1. Well, 2 times -2 is -4. Take away 1, I'm going to add the opposite, and I get -5. So my y answer is -5. So my next coordinate is -2 comma -5. All right, let's try the next one. So erase that. I'm going to put a -1 in for x. So I'm going to do 2 times negative 1 minus 1. All right, 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Take away 1, add the opposite, and I get negative 3. All right, so I fill that in my table, and my new point is negative 1 comma negative 3. All right, let's try the next one. I put a positive 1 in there. Positive ones are usually a little easier. So if I do 2 times 1, that's 2. Take away 1 is 1. So my other point is 1 comma 1. And my last one, I'm going to put a 2 in there. So if I put a 2 in there, 2 times 2 is 4, minus 1 is 3. So my y is 3. So that's my last point, 2 comma 3. Now, I'd like you to push pause, and I would like you to graph those 5 points. When you're done, push play. All right, so you have those points graphed. Now, if you notice, it looks like they form a straight line. So I'd like you to connect those and extend it. Okay, so keep extending the line. All right, so there is our graph. And if you notice, it forms a straight line, so this is linear. Okay, straight line means linear. All right, let's try one more. This will be our last one. So here's our equation, y equals x squared plus 1. All right, again, in order to graph, I need to have some coordinates. All right, right now I don't have any. So I need to figure out what are some numbers that make this true. So I'm going to put some different numbers in for x. All right, so I'm going to do negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. All right, so I'm going to start by working this out. I'm going to put a negative 2 in for x. So if I do negative 2 squared, well, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4 plus 1 equals 5. So my y would be 5. So it's negative 2 comma 5. All right, let's put a negative 1 in there. So negative 1 squared. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1 plus 1 is 2. So my next point is negative 1 comma 2. All right, 0, that's usually pretty easy. 0 squared is 0 plus 1 is 1. So 0 comma 1. My next point, let's put a 1 in for x. So 1 squared is 1 plus 1 is 2. So 1 comma 2. And finally, let's put a 2 in there. So 2 squared is 4. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So my last point is 2 comma 5. All right, again, I'd like you to pause the video and graph those 5 points. All right, so if you graph those points, here's what they would look like. All right. Now, if you notice, it's not forming a straight line this time. It's actually forming a U-shaped curve. So I'm going to draw a curve on that. So basically all I did was trace right around the dots, and it's going to keep going up if I did another point. All right, now this did not form a straight line, so this is called nonlinear. So please write that right on your graph paper. That is called nonlinear. Does not make a straight line. Another word for this is actually a parabola. It's just a little trivia for you to know. You'll work with that in 8th grade. All right, so we just graphed 2 types of equations. We graphed a linear equation, formed a straight line, and a nonlinear. It did form a straight line. Before we could do that, we had to make a table of points. All right, we had to figure out, well, what are some numbers that would work in this equation? What are some solutions to the equation? That's what we figured out, and then we graphed them. All right, so what I would like you to do for your homework. All right, you need to answer. There's 2 questions at the bottom of your note sheet. Please answer both of these. All right, if you need more space to work them out, just use the back of your paper. Answer both of these and bring them to class tomorrow to show your teacher. And if you have any questions, he or she will be able to help you tomorrow. All right, have a good night.